Welcome to the ReaderHouse Roundtable, where authors from all walks of life come together to discuss the trials, tribulations, and triumphs of publishing their books. I'm your host, Corey Graham. Join us here every Friday night at 8 p.m. or listen anytime via podcast at Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, and PodServe, to name just a few. The Author Roundtable is sponsored by ReaderHouse Online Bookstore, where the independent new authors come first. The Joseph Project. It's the name of the new book, written by Reverend Norm Stewart, and it's an inspiring blueprint for overcoming life's challenges. And we're going to talk all about this. Reverend Norm is right here with me now. Reverend Norm, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Corey. I'm so glad to be here.
Well, I'm glad to have you, and I'm curious about the Joseph Project. So can you tell me all about what you've written?
Well, the Joseph Project, like Joseph himself, he was a dreamer, and Joseph Project is a dream of mine that I conceived for some time ago and finally came to fruition. You know, in life, everyone encounters challenges, and these challenges come in many forms: personal setbacks, professional difficulties, family conflicts, and so on. And people are always looking for a solution. And in the Joseph Project, as we examine the Joseph Project, we come to realize how much the story of Joseph resonates with so much of what is happening today. And so as I prayed about this, God led me to put this together. And I'm so happy for the privilege to share this with the world through the book, The Joseph Project.
Norm, what sorts of readers did you have in mind when you were writing this?
Well, the readers I have in mind is very broad. The story of Joseph resonates with just about everyone. It is, of course, a biblical story, and as such, it resonates with Christians, with believers. But as you read the book, you realize that these problems are not just Christian problems. There are the problems that everybody faces, especially the younger generation. And so it is directed not just at believers, but just about anyone who is struggling in life and seeking a solution to life's problems.
Norm, what does your writing background look like? Are you experienced in this, or are you fairly new to it?
Fairly new to it. I am a preacher, and that is as close to being a writer as I have gotten. But I've had many, many years. I've been in the ministry for well over 50 years and perused the scriptures through and through. And so I am very aware of the problems that people faced. So it was rather natural for me to put this to paper and share it with not just my congregation, but with a worldwide congregation.
Once you got started on this, was this a long process for you, clear up through publishing and everything?
It was. It lasted at least probably over 2 years. It's the type of thing that you work on for a while, leave for a while, and then get back to it. That was really how it emerged with me over the years. So it really took about 2 years to come to fruition.
And after all the time and work that you put into it, that day finally came and you got your first copy in the mail and you got to hold the Joseph Project in your hands. Norm, what was that moment like for you?
Absolutely. I'm very excited about this. But something else that has come out of this is only the first volume of what I consider to be at least 3 and probably more volumes of the materials that I've put together. So I'm very excited at the other volumes that are in the process of releasing in the near future.
And now that you are a published author, Norm, what's the most rewarding aspect of that for you?
Well, the most rewarding aspect of it, believe it or not, is not the financial gain. Of course, I hope that will be of some value eventually. I haven't seen anything yet. But the most important value to me is how much I have been able to expand my congregation. You know, I'm not a young man anymore. I have done almost 60 years in the ministry. You might say I am pre-retired. I'm not pastoring anymore, although I do a great deal of preaching and speaking in different events. So this has opened up a great opportunity for me to expand my ministry really throughout the world.
Well, I think so many readers are going to find this book a blessing. Again, it's titled The Joseph Project. It's written by Reverend Norm Stewart, published by Christian Faith Publishing, and it's available everywhere, like Amazon and Barnes & Noble and iTunes, and also traditional brick-and-mortar stores. Norm, it's been really wonderful talking with you today. Thank you so much for coming on the show and telling me all about this.
Thank you, Corey. It has been a pleasure for me to talk with you today.
I'm really excited to welcome back to the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable, author William Black. William, great to have you back to the show. Thanks for being here again with me.
Thanks. I really appreciate that. Good to be talking with you as well.
Now, the first time around, we talked about your book, God Set Me Free, and now the audiobook edition is out. So, William, can you remind me? Tell me what God Set Me Free is all about.
Well, God Set Me Free is kind of a memoir, testimonial to overcoming drug addiction, some mental health psychosis and things like that, and how God came into my life and, basically set me free. My life of incarceration and trouble with drugs obviously didn't reveal the good side or the good nature to me, but since God has come into my life, I've totally rewritten the script. I'm an author. I got a great career. I own a construction company, so the power of God is true. Trust in Him.
William, when you were writing this, you were going into your past and sort of all those dark areas, and you're leaving yourself vulnerable, really opening up here. So I can't imagine that this was an easy thing for you to write.
No, it's definitely not easy, but my reason for being so forward with my story is that if I can just reach out and help one person in the world realize that there is a different way of life, that trust in God and changing your life is possible, then, the whole exposure and, peeking behind the curtains, if you will, into my life and what I've overcome is totally worth it to me.
What sort of readers did you have in mind for this? Are they people who sort of experienced the same things that you've gone through?
Yeah, people that have gone through what I've gone through. And I also thought a lot about the friends and family of addicts and recovering addicts that deal with the burdens and the heartache of seeing somebody go through it. So I really wanted to give those folks hope for their loved ones as well.
How long did this take you? The writing, the publishing, the audiobook edition, everything. Was that a long process?
It's a pretty long process. It's been about a 2-year start to finish, and it's not completely finished now, but it's from start to finish. Of course, now is when you got to learn advertising and everything and then take that on. The writing and the publication process has been just about 2 years.
Like I said, the audiobook edition just came out, so you had to select just the kind of voice that you thought would be just right for this. Was that a challenge to find that voice?
I interviewed a few people and, not taking anything away from the other individuals that I interviewed, but Benjamin Fife just really spoke to me, the way his expressions came through, tonalities. He was very well at expressing dramatic incidences and different things like that. So it was kind of a no-brainer. It spoke to me right off, so I picked him pretty quickly.
And you've been used to reading the words off the screen, off the page as you've been working on this. And now with the audiobook, somebody is reading that back to you. So what was that like to hear your own words read back to you?
It actually almost feels like you're listening to somebody else's story or life experiences, But it definitely is an eye-opener to hear somebody tell you what you went through and, through their narration. It's a very unique but interesting experience to go through.
And audiobooks have become wildly popular in the past several years, so a lot of people listening to us right now are probably considering going that route at one point. So, William, is there anything in particular about the audiobook edition that you could put out there as maybe some advice, maybe some things to look out for the authors who may be getting into this?
Yeah, if I could say one thing to them, I'd say go for it. And the reason why is because I'm a coal miner as well as, doing other things. And so many people that I work with throughout their day at work are listening to those in the background. So they can pause and get back to it, but they don't have to actually take the time to sit and read the book and concentrate on the words. They can just kind of listen to the story. And I've had more people speak to me about, do the audio book and get it out there because we'll get it for sure because we'll listen to it at work and things like that. So, for commuters and, people that are working, driving or whatever, operating equipment, I think it's a perfect fit. So I definitely would suggest to any new author to give it a shot.
So have you considered writing more, William? Do you think you have more books in you here in the future?
I do, actually. I've got like 6 of them in the works, and I've got a couple going to the publisher already that's in the publication process.
Oh, wow.
So absolutely. Look for more from William Black to come.
Fantastic. I think this book and the audio book will set a lot of people free. The title again is God Set Me Free. It's written by William Black, and it's published by the Audiobook Network, so go on over to where you normally get your audiobooks and you'll be able to pick this up, places like Audible and iTunes and Amazon. William, it's been really great talking with you again. Thanks again for coming on the show.
Absolutely. Pleasure's all mine. Thank you very much, sir.
Author Liz A. Storm is reaching out to younger readers in her new book, Conversing with Children in Today's America. And I get to find out all about this book. The author, Liz, is sitting right here with me now at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. Liz, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining me tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Liz, I'm curious about conversing with children in today's America, so can you tell me all about it?
Yeah, so the book is about, actually there's 14 poems in the book. Each poem has a question from a child and an answer from an adult Christian. And the questions are based on issues in today's society. A lot of people, especially children, have questions about their origin, the origin of humanity. They have questions about who they are. They have questions about God, about Jesus, about death, suffering. They have questions about, either things like gender, abortion. So I just wanted to address all of these issues that, we see very commonly on television.
What age range of children would you say? Are they younger children or older children or sort of the whole gamut there?
Yeah, so they're meant for older children who are asking themselves a lot of serious questions, and even young adults or anyone who's seeking truth, but it's mainly for older children.
Have you ever done anything like this before, Liz? Have you written or published prior?
No, this is my first book.
Oh, congratulations. So it was your first one. Did that mean it was a really long time getting this all put together?
No, it only took me about 6 months, I would say, between the end of 2016 and 2017. There is one poem that I did write in 2018, but it didn't take me that long. The poems just kind of came to me.
And the artwork is really great. It can be a challenge, maybe sort of getting those pictures in your head onto the page. So was getting those illustrations right a smooth process?
Oh, yeah. Well, the illustrator was great. I mean, as soon as I saw the art, I thought it would just fit the book perfectly. So, yeah, I really like the illustrations. I didn't have anything to do with it, just gave her ideas, and he or she was able to do a great job.
Now, there is an awful lot involved in that publishing process. Illustrations is just one part of it. What did you find the most challenging part of that whole publishing thing?
Actually, I wanted to do the illustrations myself, so I actually started doing that myself, and then I realized it was too hard. So I think that was the hardest part for me, getting the illustrations done.
And now that you're officially a published author, Liz, it must feel great. What would you say is the most rewarding aspect of it for you?
I think what's most rewarding is just knowing that this is what God wanted me to do, so that I'm doing God's will, and that I'll be able to reach out to children and even, younger adults. And that's the most rewarding part for me.
And the whole time you're looking at your book on the computer screen, and finally, after all that time and that work that you put into it, that first copy comes in and you see it, it's for real, you get to hold it in your hands, Liz. What was that moment like for you?
It was really exciting, and I just couldn't believe it. I just felt very accomplished that I finally was done with that. So I felt it was like a mission from God that I had to finish that book. So It's a great accomplishment. It's my only book so far. So I just feel like this is really something that God wanted me to get done. And it took me a long time, but I finally was able to finish. So
you said it's your only book so far, so does that mean you've thought about some more here?
I'm thinking about, yes, I have a few more ideas, but I haven't really started. I'm still thinking about it, and I just feel like I need more direction from the Holy Spirit before I start doing anything.
Is writer's block ever a thing you have to deal with?
Yeah, that's how it comes to me. Yeah, well, this is not a storybook. This is just poems. So the poems would just come to me like spontaneously while driving or talking to someone or, reading or watching television. They would just come to me. I didn't really have to okay, I'm going to sit down and write this book. So
I think this book is going to be great for so many children. Again, the title of this is Conversing with Children in Today's America. This is written by Liz A. Storm and published by Christian Faith Publishing, so get it places like Amazon or Barnes & Noble or iTunes, and also down the street at your local bookshop. Liz, it's been really nice talking with you tonight. Thank you again for coming on the show and telling me all about this.
Same here. Thank you so much.
Author Anthony Gonzalez looks to make learning about the Bible fun for children in his new book, The Parable of the Prodigal Son. And that's what we're going to be talking about right now. Anthony is sitting right here with me. Anthony, welcome to the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. It's great to be talking with you.
Thank you, Corey. I'm pleased to be here.
It's great to have you. Anthony, can you tell me what readers are going to find whenever they open up The Parable of the Prodigal Son?
When they open up The Parable of the Prodigal Son, they're going to find a children's version of the book with very vibrant pictures and easy-to-understand language for kids that they can relate to, where the story will come to life for them and they'll be able to see not only through the pictures, but the easy language. They'll be able to understand the parable. It's my favorite parable in the Bible, so I really enjoyed writing it and making it fun for children.
Yeah, that's great. You're bringing the Bible to life for kids. What age range of kids do you think this is perfect for?
I would say elementary school, so kindergarten through fifth grade.
So how did this come about, Anthony? What gave you the idea to do this?
I had been teaching one of my friends. Her son was going through classes. One of the things that we were talking about was the different Bible parables, and I was looking for a good illustrated book for him to talk about the parable of the prodigal son, and I really couldn't find one. And that was where I got the idea that this would be a good one to do a book with vibrant illustrations that kids would like.
Now, is this your first time at this kind of thing, publishing and all, or do you have experience in it?
Well, this is my third book. This was my first religious book. My first two were about my St. Bernard trouble.
So how long of a journey was this once you got started on the parable of the prodigal son? Was it a long one?
No, once I got started, the actual writing of the book took less than a week to kind of put it in a way that it was easy to understand because, of course, the Bible tells the story. So not having to create a lot of imagery in there. The words were already there. We just had to put it in small packets with pictures that kids would understand. So actually writing the book was not difficult at all. It didn't take long. But the publishing piece, that took almost a year to finish.
Yeah, the illustrations are super important in books like this. Was that an easy process to get those images that you saw in your head down onto paper?
Well, it was one of the things for the publisher. They give you multiple examples of illustrators. And I looked at the different types of illustrations and I chose the few that I wanted. And from there, I was able to see their different sketches. And once I saw the sketches and I saw the ones by the illustrators for my book, when I finally chose that, then it was easy to work with them. It was easy to make changes. But yeah, it was very important to get the right type of pictures in there, where it wasn't too abstract. The colors were bright, and it was everything that I wanted to see in the book.
So you had well over a year into this, and after all that time, after all the work you put into it, you open up your mailbox, and finally you get it, that first copy. You're holding the parable of the prodigal son in your hands. What's going through your head at that point?
Well, at that point, I was looking at the story itself, and I was going back to look at the Bible. Of course, my Bible doesn't have any pictures in it, and now I'm seeing it this way. And the first thing I did was take it to my friend's son and see what he thought of it, because that was my intended audience. So it really filled my heart with joy to see that.
And now that you're officially a published author, Anthony, when you think about that, what's the most rewarding aspect of it for you?
The most rewarding aspect is to actually go to either book signings or friends just reading it to their children and seeing them look at the pictures and flip through the pages and ask questions. So that's been the most rewarding part.
A lot of people who are listening to us right now are authors just starting out. Anthony, do you have anything that you might have picked up along the way of doing this for a few books now that you could put out there as advice for them?
The biggest thing is when you're setting up the pages themselves, just knowing from your publisher how many sketches you're going to be able to use. So for me, it was 18 sketches that I could have in the book. So from there, I had to go back, go through the parable, and put it together between each page with the words that I was doing and the picture that I want to associate with it, just knowing what your limits are. Then that helps you quite a bit to build the picture the way you want it to be while you still have the space to do it.
Well, sounds like children are really going to love this book. Again, the title is The Parable of the Prodigal Son, It's written by Anthony Gonzalez and published by Christian Faith Publishing. So you can find it anywhere. Go on over to Amazon or Barnes & Noble or iTunes or traditional brick-and-mortar stores. You'll be able to pick it up. Well, Anthony, I really appreciate you talking with me tonight. Thank you so much again for being on the show with me.
Thank you. I appreciate you calling.
This is the story of a small cucumber beetle. It's the new book written by Nicholas D. Wynn. It's titled Timothy's Transformation. And we're going to talk all about this. I'm really happy that the author, Nicholas, is sitting right here with me now at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. Nicholas, welcome. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Well, it's great to be talking with you, and I'm really curious about Timothy's transformation, Nicholas. Can you tell me about that?
Yeah, the book, I actually wrote a story in college where I took an entomology class, and it was one of the assignments for my class. I had to write a story that used different aspects of different insects, and I wrote it sophomore year of college and then just forgot about it. And when I was cleaning out the house one day, I found my old laptop and came across that story and said, man, this might be a good children's book. And then I just started the process of trying to get it published, and especially with the message that it teaches of identity, finding your identity not in your circumstances or anything else other than what you were created to be, I think is a vitally important message. So I was like, yeah, I think this would really be a good children's book, especially for today. And so then I started trying to get it published.
Is this the first time you've done something like this, or have you done it before?
No, this is the first time. I actually just came home one day and started talking to my wife. I said, babe, I'm publishing a book. And she was taken off guard because it's not something I'd ever even talked about, really. So, yeah, it was all new for both of us.
How long of a process are we talking about? Was this a drawn-out one being your first time?
It took about 9 months. When we found out we were having our baby, our first baby, we found out we were pregnant, and that same week is the week that I found out that the book was being published.
Oh.
And then the day that our son was born is the day I got the hard copy of the book in the mail.
Oh, wow.
So it took about 9 months.
And what was that like when you finally got it in and it's all of a sudden it's a real thing and you're holding it?
Oh, yes, it was surreal. I actually did this. And then I got it in one of the local stores here in Stanton. And it was like, wow. I actually wrote that, and it's actually in someone's store, so someone can come in here and buy that. That was a new feeling. It feels great. It feels cool to be able to have something that I wrote actually out there.
Well, one thing that's super important about a lot of children's books is the illustrations. Nicholas, was that difficult for you to get those illustrations lined up with what was in your head?
I'm not an illustrator by any means, and I will tell anybody that. So the company that I published through, they're called Covenant Books, they hired illustrators, and they really helped get the idea that I had in my head onto the paper. Because I just had a bunch of ideas, but I'm not an illustrator. I don't think like an illustrator. And so having someone that actually is an illustrator and thinks like that to be able to say, this is what those words need to look like on a piece of paper. The process did take a while, especially when it's your first book and you're a little impatient. It did take a while, and they would send something back, and I would say, no, I don't like that. Let's go a different direction. And then they'd send something back, and I would say, oh, that looks great, especially with the main character, like developing him. I remember the first sketch that they sent me, they did the finished sketch, and it was nothing like I had pictured in my head. It didn't really look like the beetle, like the colors and the spots and stuff. I sent it back and said, oh, no, we got to change this. He pointed out certain things, and then they fixed it. And from there, it was great. It was just picking out the small things, but they were really great to work with. And the whole process was really enjoyable, being able to go through that.
So what are the chances that we're going to see another one from you? You think of writing more here in the future?
Possibly. I don't know if it'll be like a series. There are some things hopefully in the works. I would definitely like to write more. So yeah, hopefully so.
Fantastic. Well, what a wonderful message this book has. Definitely go check it out. Again, the title is Timothy's Transformation. This is written by Nicholas D. Wynn and published by Covenant Books, so pick it up anywhere, really, like at Amazon or Barnes & Noble or iTunes, also traditional brick-and-mortar stores. Well, Nicholas, it's been fantastic talking with you tonight, learning all about Timothy's transformation. Thanks again for coming on the show.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. It's been a real blessing.
There's a look at a mother's struggle with grief and survivor's guilt in the new book written by Christina Stuebs. It's titled Barely Surviving, and I'm really happy to welcome Christina to the show. We're going to talk all about this. Christina, welcome. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you on the show. I'm excited to be learning about Barely Surviving. So, Christina, can you tell me all about this?
Yeah, so Barely Surviving is fiction, but it is based on some true events. Barely Surviving takes an in-depth look at a mother's survivor's guilt and extreme grief after the loss of not only her children, but her husband several years after an accident that ruined her life and shattered it in pieces. On her journey to healing, she met someone who will change her life from barely surviving to a choice to live again. Callie is the main character. She's been through so much in her life, and she really just feels she deserves to live a lonely, self-destructive life after not being able to save her children and then losing her husband to his own grief as well. Nate and Layla, Callie's best friend, they want to save her from herself, but she fights them in the entire way. Nate desperately tries to get her to see that even if she doesn't want him, she could save herself with one choice at a time. And her friend Layla, with her big personality, she just wants her friend to see that there's more to life than just barely surviving. What makes this book fiction is the loss of my husband, as he's very much alive and supports me every day. The loss of my husband in the book is based off of a time that I thought I had lost him to himself after the accident. But everything else, Callie's feelings, emotions, everything she goes through is all through the accident that ruined my life 15 years ago. Feeling so worthless and lonely, it was definitely the hardest thing I've been through in my entire life. So,
Christina, what sorts of readers would be most into this, would you say?
So I've thought about that actually, but I'm not really sure I have targeted readers, so to speak. I am hopeful that someone who may be going through a similar tragedy or maybe experiencing extreme grief could look at my story and see that, hey, you can survive after a loss that big. You may never be who you once were, but that it's okay to live and heal. I don't think that I'll ever stop grieving for the ones I once had, but I do understand that they were a part of my life and that it's okay for me to feel so broken sometimes and have so much anger and pain over the loss of them. Life definitely doesn't stop just because I want it to, but it will continue on without me.
Have you done this kind of thing before, Christina? Written a book, maybe been published, or are you new to all this?
No, this is actually my very first published book.
Wow, congratulations. That's such a huge deal getting that first one out there. So, being it was your first, was this a long process for you, the writing of it and publishing everything?
Originally, I actually wrote the book as a memoir. Then I deleted it, and then I wrote it again as a memoir. But I couldn't put it out there like that for some reason. And so I finally wrote it again into a grief recovery romance. And it took several years for me to actually get it to a point that I genuinely liked it and thought, okay, let's send it off and see if it's publishable.
Once you sent your manuscript off to Hawes & Jenkins and you started that publishing process, there's a lot involved there. What did you find the most challenging part of that for you?
The challenging part, I think it was just the waiting to see if they were going to accept it or if it was, I think you put so much time and effort into writing it that you're so worried that you're more of a critic of your own work, I think, than somebody else. So you just see the parts that you feel aren't good of it, I guess you could say.
So when that day finally came for you and you open up your mailbox and the first copy finally came in, it's a real finished product. You held Barely Surviving in your hands, Christina. What kind of a moment was that like for you?
Oh, man, it was incredible. I felt like I was on such a life high. I'm so proud of myself. I felt so accomplished, and I was thankful for the publishing company and how easy they made it all.
Well, this book is going to touch the lives of so many people, I know it. Again, this is titled Barely Surviving. It's written by Christina Stuebs and published by Hawes & Jenkins Publishing. So you can find it everywhere. Head over to Amazon or Barnes & Noble or iTunes or take a walk down the street to your local bookshop and you'll be able to pick this one up. Christina, I really appreciate you coming on the show and talking to me all about Barely Surviving. It was great. Thanks again.
No problem. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
The memoir I'm looking at right now tells of the author's life journey of trials and triumphs. The book's titled Just My Story, A Slave of Destiny. And the author is John R. Simpson, Sr., and we get to talk all about this. John is sitting right here with me now. John, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you for welcoming me.
Absolutely. John, can you tell me all about Just My Story, A Slave of Destiny? What can readers find here?
This book is basically about my life story, the numerous challenges I've had, failures and successes, like most people, from my early childhood to my second retirement.
And what kinds of readers did you have in mind while you were writing?
My immediate target readers was my family and my friends. I intended to display to the world that one can be rich without being rich, and one can be poor without knowing they're poor. Regardless, one can be successful if they listen closely to destiny. And I realized that there is very little control that I had over my life. I truly believe that one's past is predetermined. And I wanted my kids and my offspring to understand that.
So what sparked you to get started on this? Where did this idea come from?
Actually, I never really had the idea to write my own memoirs. Actually, what happened is that I had this problem with parathyroid glands, and I went to the doctor, and he told me that it was causing an overproduction of calcium, which was making little white spots around my eyes. And he told me that he could remove the parathyroid gland, but he had to do surgery, which means that he had to go through the front of my neck in order to get to the back of my neck, where the thyroid glands are located, the parathyroid glands. And obviously I'm pretty vain, and I said, oh, not that can't happen. But eventually I realized that it got worse, and I went back to the doctor, and he says, you know, if you let me do this, my patients been telling me that they get some of their memory back. I went, yeah, right, Doc, that's not going to happen. But eventually I went in and let him do this. And woke up one night about 3 months later after the surgery in the middle of my sleep, and I remembered something that happened to me when I was a very young kid. And I said, oh, my God. And from there, I started remembering things, and I started recording it. And then I said, I need to write this down. And at the same time, I was working on ancestry, too. So all of that together made me decide, hey, I need to start writing.
Have you ever done anything like this before when it comes to writing or publishing or anything like that?
I did a lot of writing in the United States Air Force and as an administrator in public education, but never writing anything like this, a memoir, a book, nothing like that.
How long did this take you then once you got started on it?
It took me about 3 years. I was retired and I set up and I would write, and then I would take a break for about 3 months. Then something else I would remember, then I'd have to write, then I'd go back and write. And that's why it took me 3 years.
Then that day finally came for you, John, and there's your first copy. It's a real thing. You got to hold Just My Story in your hands for that first time. What was that like for you?
Oh, it was overwhelming. It's still overwhelming. Every new turn that I make, an interview like this or television viewing, it just hits me. It's like, this can't be happening to me. It just can't be. It's surreal.
And now you're officially a published author, John. What's the most rewarding aspect to you of that?
I guess it's having my family and my friends just constantly patting me on the back. They can't believe it either. So it's really rewarding just to be recognized by them. Obviously, I'm the first in my family to have ever done this. So, it's exciting.
And once you were done with the manuscript, handed it off to Newman Springs, started that publishing process. John, what did you find the most challenging part of that publishing end of things for you?
Actually, Newman Springs made it very, very easy for me. Actually, they really did. Every time I had a question, all I had to do was call. They got right back to me. They would answer my question. The next question would come up and the next. And the editing process just went smooth, and they just worked with me. And had it not been for them, obviously, this would not have been possible.
And what are the chances we might see another book from you here in the future?
Well, I wrote this book, and I retired in 2014. So this is when I started writing, and it's been 10 years ago. And as I say now, 10 years later, I have a whole other book to write. I don't know when I was started, but I'm thinking about it.
Well, I think this story is going to move a lot of people. If you're listening right now, I recommend that you go check it out. Again, the title of it is Just My Story, A Slave of Destiny. It's written by John R. Simpson, Sr., and published by Newman Springs Publishing, so find it at places like Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and iTunes, and also traditional brick-and-mortar stores. John, it's been really great talking tonight. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
And thank you, sir, for your time. I appreciate it.
There's an inspiring testament to faith and service in the new book written by Bob Paeglow. It's titled Hope Does Not Disappoint. Stories from the Life and Ministry of Dr. Bob Paeglow. And we're going to be talking all about this. Bob is here with me now. Bob, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Corey. It's a pleasure.
Absolutely, Bob. Can you tell me what you've written about, what readers can expect here whenever they open up Hope Does Not Disappoint?
Well, it's really the story of my life, which is a very unusual life in the fact that I went to medical school at the age of 36 with a wife and 4 kids, which was miraculous that I even got into medical school. They can read about how that happened, and then was called by God to begin to work in the developing world in places like Africa and Haiti and places like that were very, very desperate. And then after doing that for a number of years, was called back to my own inner city neighborhood where I grew up in West Hill in Albany, New York, which is the poorest, most desperate neighborhood in the city, and to start a clinic here, a primary care clinic, caring for people, their primary care needs, as well as their mental health and addiction needs. And so the last 24 years, we've been down in the hood, so to speak, running the clinic, and we've just experienced a tremendous amount of miracles and wonderful things have happened down here to allow us to do this great work.
Yeah, sounds like you're doing some really great things, Bob. So what made you decide to sit down and write your story and publish it?
You know, I like to tell stories, and so I would often at social gatherings or whatever, I would be with friends or family and begin to tell stories about all the incredible things that happened, and people would say to me, Bob, you need to write a book. You need to share these stories with other people. And I was like, I'm not really a writer, you know, I'm just a dumb doctor. After you hear that enough, you know, finally you get the idea, you know what? Maybe people could benefit from these stories and be encouraged and inspired and do some things that they thought maybe they dreamed about, but for whatever reason didn't have the courage to do at the time. Maybe it'd give them just a little nudge to try to do something great with their life. And so that's what inspired me to sit down and put pen to paper, so to speak.
Bob, what kinds of readers did you have in mind when you were writing this?
I do a lot of teaching with medical students and health professionals. So on one level, I thought that, you know, it'd be great for our medical students to read, but it's really much more than that. It's a book about people, nobodies from nowhere, who somehow get a call from God and find the courage to just take a step out and risk some things, and tremendous, wonderful, great things happen. And I just wanted people from all faith backgrounds or no faith backgrounds to be able to see what can be done in your life if you're willing to take a step in faith and to pursue your dreams. And sometimes those dreams come true, like getting into medical school when I didn't even qualify for an interview, buying a building that was priced at $250,000 when I didn't have $250 in my pocket. You know, working here without a salary for about 12 years and hiring my wife as our nurse, and I couldn't pay her either because, you know, there wasn't much money to be had caring for the uninsured and those with Medicaid back in those days. And so amazing, wonderful things happened, and I just think that people who read these stories would be encouraged.
When it comes to publishing, writing books and all of that, Bob, are you new to all of this, or are you experienced in it?
No, I'm very, very new. I'm a newbie. You know, I always loved to tell stories, but I was never real confident in my ability to sit down and put words on paper that people would actually read and say, oh, that's pretty good. I'm encouraged. I think I'll write another one. I'm actually thinking about that right now.
This sounds like quite an extraordinary story. Again, the book is titled Hope Does Not Disappoint: Stories from the Life and Ministry of Dr. Bob Paeglow. Of course, this is written by Bob Paeglow and published by Christian Faith Publishing. So you can find it everywhere, really, like Amazon, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, and traditional brick-and-mortar stores. Well, Bob, it's been great talking with you tonight. Thank you so much again for coming on the show with me.
Yes, thanks, Corey. It's a pleasure, and thank you so much. I appreciate it.
What is good hair? An age-old debate untangled. That's the name of the new book, written by Thembekile Dube And we're going to talk all about this. Thembekile is here with me now at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. Thembekile, thank you so much for joining me.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited. I love talking about hair, so this is going to be great.
Absolutely. I'm excited to find out all about this. Thembekile, can you tell me about it?
So this book is a science-based manual for taking care of textured hair. I decided to write this book after spending years, at least more than 5 years, researching, trying to find out how to take care of my newly natural hair. And I decided to compile all of the findings and the tests that I did on myself into this book.
How would I know if this would help me in my type of hair?
So you would know if this would help you if you have recently maybe reached a hair growth plateau. So your hair has reached a height and hasn't grown past it anymore. If you're experiencing problems with breakage or shedding or just trying to figure out how to love the hair on your head, this is the book for you.
So when it comes to writing and publishing and everything like that, are you new to this or are you experienced with it?
I am new to this. This was my first book I've ever published.
Congratulations. That's so huge. How long did this take you? Was it a really long time since it was your first?
It actually took me a pretty short amount of time to write it. I think writing it took me about 3 months because I kind of had all of the evidence already laid out. And then, I added my story. So it took only 3 months to write it. But then after that, it took me maybe another 4 to 6 months to find a publishing company I wanted to work with. And then once I found them, from that time until the time I got my book in my hand was about a year and a half.
Once you did hand this off to the publisher, you started that publishing process. Thembekile, what did you find the most challenging part of that publishing end of things?
I think the most challenging part was patience. Going into it, I just kind of expected this to be done within 6 months. And I had to learn how to really just settle in and allow things to unfold as they should and not try to rush through it.
And after that time, all that waiting, going back and forth, you finally get it in, that first copy, you're holding this in your hands. What was that like for you?
Almost didn't really have words. I didn't know how to feel. I didn't know how to feel. I just couldn't believe, to see my name on the cover of a book. And I think also because I had been working on it for so long, maybe I didn't celebrate it as much because I kind of in my head was already like, okay, I've done that. Now thinking of what next I want to accomplish. So after a while, it really settled in for me. And I was like, oh my gosh, I actually wrote a book. Wow.
I'm looking at it right now. This is a beautiful cover. Can you tell me how that came together?
So I wanted something that helps symbolize something I talk a lot about in the book, which is the hair being similar to a plant. So I wanted to somehow find a picture that exemplified that. And I hired someone to help me design the cover. And at first I just gave them a general thoughts of what I wanted to do. And when I got it back, it wasn't really speaking to me. So I decided to look up different images. And after finding that image of that woman, I was like, okay, I like this. And I found some leaves in the background. And I felt like that was telling the intro to the story of how to take care of the plant that is on our heads.
So have you given thought to maybe doing it again? You think you got more books in you?
I definitely do think I have more books in me. They might be a little different, but I think maybe this time I would add some fiction in there. It'd be more of a story. But yeah, I definitely am looking forward to writing something again.
I think a lot of people are going to get so much out of this book. Again, it's titled, What is Good Hair? An Age-Old Debate Untangled. It's written by Thembekile Dube and published by Christian Faith Publishing. So you can find it everywhere, really, like Amazon and Barnes & Noble and iTunes and also traditional brick-and-mortar stores. But Thembekile, it's been really wonderful talking with you tonight and learning all about this book. Thanks again for coming on the show with me.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. This is a blessing.
Author Norman Curfman has written a practical, faith-based guide to help individuals achieve personal growth and success. The book's titled The Life Skills Program, A Path to Living a Successful Lifestyle. And Norman, the author, is right here with me. We get to talk all about this book today. Norman, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Norman, can you tell me all about what you've written about here in the Life Skills Program?
It's a program that's saturated with Christian worldview that will impart God's wisdom into the lives of every man and woman who studies it and applies it. Those who take the opportunity to read it and learn, those who want to grow to help themselves move away from a bad situation. But the teachings of the program will educate and equip students with life skills many people haven't had the opportunity of studying and learning. And it also synthesizes years of experience in teaching foundational concepts in living a life based on God's Word and Christ's example. It applies truth to the reality of living in our society, especially to those that have been involved in the justice system.
Norman, what were your target readers here? Who did you have in mind while you were writing this?
Initially, it was with the justice-involved people, that population. But the more I began to teach it, it became involved with groups like Celebrate Recovery, Alcoholics Anonymous, and other groups, even a women's pregnancy center. So it's really for everybody who wants to move away from situations in their life. For example, there are many different kinds of prisons, and most of them are in people's own minds, and it will help them with that a great deal.
Was there anything in particular, Norman, that kind of spurred you on and said, all right, I got to sit down and write this book?
Yeah, essentially working with people, managing people with many different cultures and backgrounds, the life type issues that they had that got them into trouble. And as I began to work with people and manage people in different parts of my life, I realized that there was a need for this type of medium to help people who are struggling with life.
When it comes to writing, publishing, and all of that, Norman, are you new to all this, or do you have experience in it?
I'm new to all of it. This is my first effort.
Congratulations. That's such a huge deal to get that first one out there. How long of a journey was this for you? Once you sat down, started writing it, clear up until it was published and it got out there?
About a year and a half.
And after that year and a half, all the time and work that you put into this, and you finally get your first copy in, and it's actually a real thing. You get to hold it. What was that moment like for you?
Sensational. It was a great feeling of satisfaction to have completed an effort that took a long journey to do. A lot of research and studying and so forth, and to get it finally published was just a pleasure.
Now that you are a published author, what would you say is the most rewarding aspect of that for you?
To have people that I know about that have read the book and it's have a significant impact on their lives. When you can impact an individual's life to improve their life and help them through it, it's just a great feeling and satisfaction.
There's a lot involved in the publishing end of things. Norman, what did you find the most challenging part about that publishing process?
The editing piece. It took me totally by surprise. It was many iterations of editing to get it into the format that it is. So it was a journey just to do that.
Have you given thought to writing more, maybe publishing some more here in the future?
Yes, I plan on doing a sequel to it.
And it can be quite the learning experience doing this all for the first time. Norman, do you have advice now that you'd be able to help out the aspiring authors with?
Yes, do lots of research. First of all, have a vision and a dream. Follow your dream and be committed to it. And don't get tired or leave the effort behind, because you need to complete your dream. And it can be a struggle to do that. At points in time, it can be very difficult and disappointing. But stay with the struggle, stay the course, and you'll be very happy with the outcome.
You know, it can be difficult to take a project this size on alone, and it's often helpful if you maybe have some people who can encourage you, maybe keep you a little motivated along the way. Norman, did you have people like that in your life?
I have a friend named Dan Heimbach. He's an author. He encouraged me many times to stay the course, along with the board of directors for the ministry, Life Skills Prison Ministry.
Well, what an important book. What a great message, and it's definitely something that's needed out there. Again, the title is The Life Skills Program, A Path to Living a Successful Lifestyle. It's written by Norman Curfman, published by Christian Faith Publishing. You can find it everywhere pretty much, like Amazon and Barnes & Noble, iTunes, and traditional brick-and-mortar stores. Norman, it's been really nice talking with you tonight. Thanks again for coming on the show with me.
Well, thank you so very much. I appreciate it very much. You have a blessed day.
We hope you enjoyed this edition of the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. where authors from all walks of life come together to discuss the trials, tribulations, and triumphs of publishing their books. We hope to see you back here every Friday night at 8 p.m. or listen anytime via podcast at Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, and PodServe, to name just a few. The Author Roundtable is sponsored by ReaderHouse Online Bookstore, where independent new authors come first.